I want to briefly just introduce you in the context of how I know you, which,
Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what year it was that we met. It was probably 2014 or something like that.
I think so. Yeah, and I think that we had been in touch because I sent something to Jester at one point that you picked
That's
up,
true.
right?
Yes.
And then that was when you were in California still, and then you moved to Atlanta,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like when we started hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, obviously we would hang out at readings and stuff, and then um, you had wait, what was that reading series called?
Mm, the Dirty South reading series with
Y-
Alex, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
the one that was at Couch Couch and
Couch
at various
Couch.
other places. Yeah,
Yeah, I went to a
yeah.
few at Couch Couch. That was super fun. That was a cool little. Did you lived at that spot or no?
Alex lived there
Alex
for a
lived there.
while. Yeah. A lot of people
Yeah.
I know lived there at one time or another.
Yeah, it seemed like a special little
Funny.
place. And yeah, I was just, I was happy to meet you and Alex, and because you guys are awesome. And when I went to Rome, I got a chance to hang out with Alex. And I think
That's
that
so great.
when I went to Rome, I think you had gone there recently for his wedding.
Right. Yeah. I think we didn't overlap, but I think it was like a month apart. It's too bad we
I know.
couldn't meet up in Rome, man.
Yeah,
I
it
love
was
Rome.
kind of me too, man. It was a blast. I loved it
Yeah.
there. And I met my parents there because my parents were in Italy for like 3 weeks and they were going
Oh,
to
cool.
different cities.
Cool.
And one time when I was in Georgia, they were planning their trip and everything, and I was just kind of got the idea that I wanted to meet them in one of the cities that they were going
Yeah.
to be at. And I ended up choosing
Sick.
Rome, and I knew that Alex lived there, but I didn't know what neighborhood he lived in. And
Uh huh.
serendipitously, I scheduled to hang out. Like my parents were going to leave Rome a few days before I was going to fly back.
Uh
So I
huh.
had a few days by myself in Rome, and I had luckily got an Airbnb in the same exact neighborhood as Alex. So it was like,
In Pineto. That's
yeah,
great.
that place
It's a
rules.
good
That
place to
neighborhood's great.
stay. Yeah, it's a guys. It's like as far as things to do, that's probably the best neighborhood
I
because
loved it.
it's. I don't know. There's more locals there. There's a lot of expats and stuff like that, but in terms of like, there's not as much touristy shit as like Trastevere
Very true.
Trastevere and like, you know, so there's not like people ambling around like idiots and stuff,
Right.
looking at shit.
Right, right. Yeah, and he and his wife took me to a party one night, and so I got a very local experience. I hung out with all their local friends and had some amazing food and wine and
Yeah.
mozzarella cheese. It was great.
Did he take you to Spaghetti at Midnight? Did you go to
He
that place?
No, he did not.
No. Damn, that's my favorite bar there. It's awesome.
Damn, next
It's
time I
like
gotta
open. It's open till super late, and they have like a menu that just has like four things, and it's like all traditional. Like one is like it's like fried sardines, like pasta de alici, and like veal meatballs and stuff like that. They only serve those three things, but they're like one of the only bars in Pineto that stay open till like 2 or 3 a.m. and they just keep
Yeah,
on serving all night long. So it's pretty cool.
nice. Yeah, he took me to like a craft beer bar and then to a wine bar, and then we went to the party.
Cool.
But yeah,
Cool.
he's a good guy.
Yeah,
Um
he's a good host
he's a great host.
and a good guy, obviously.
Yes. Well, I want to start off by asking this Zen question from an old Zen koan to see what you see your response to it.
All right.
So the question is, all things return to the one. Where does the one return to?
Hmm. I don't know. Nowhere or
Mm-hmm.
nothingness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's the what.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe.
When you think about the notion of the one, what comes to mind for you even?
I think maybe just like the cosmos, in general,
Mm.
I like that kind of like living, breathing system of the cosmos that encompasses everything, from the planets to the stars to plants to us,
Yep.
evolution, all that stuff.
Yep.
So I kind of like believe in the power of the cosmos in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I like thinking of things as, these larger, like overarching systems that kind of exist in themselves that are alive,
Totally.
Yeah. So that's what I think of when I think of like oneness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but there's
Yeah.
all these different levels to it, I think, too. Like on a personal level, oneness is like, for me, it's like being present, um, and aware of, like, all of your senses as much as you can be, um, which is a lot often easier said than done.
Right.
You know, but
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's an interesting point. I mean, oneness on a cosmic level can be seen as the whole interdependent cosmos itself. And on a personal level, it can often feel like what you're saying, maybe kind of this unity of your whole being, senses,
right,
mind, emotion, body,
right.
where it's no longer disconnected.
Hmm.
um which for me in the last few months, I've just been kind of stuck on this notion of stillness. I know that's a word
Hmm.
that's used in mystical traditions a lot, and it's one of those words that could be easily like disposable or whatever, but some
Yeah,
certain words that kind of touch on the same thing, some of them are more resonant with me than others, just on like a felt sense level. And stillness, when I just kind of try to embrace or activate or uncover stillness within myself, then that's when I feel the most at one in the way that you're talking about.
right, right. Yeah, that stillness is hard to find
It
sometimes.
is.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. It's there's like those fleeting moments of stillness too that I can appreciate, that happen when you're not looking for them, which I think are like examples that you're working towards the right thing, or whatever your personal goals are. You know what I mean? I mean, for me, having a peace of mind amidst global pandemic and all these
Yeah.
other terrible things in the world that are happening and stuff like that
Yeah.
isn't easy, because our senses every day are kind of like bombarded with things left and right. One thing, I don't read the news anymore, so
I
that
haven't
helps.
been really recently either, and it does feel better. Do you feel guilty
Yeah,
at all?
I feel guilty in the sense that I'm not probably helping contribute anything maybe positive to these necessary situations and dialogues that are taking place at this point. But for me, mentally, especially being down here in Buenos Aires and stuff like that, reading the news and what comes out of Canada and what comes out of the States and stuff like that, for me is just like creates a sort of feeling of like helplessness that I kind of like, I can't help but feeling it, but at the same time, I think to myself, well, I live here, you know what I mean? This is where I've been for the past 8 years, so it sucks and it's sad to see, but, um, uh, I think that, it's important, right? I mean, like, change starts at, a local level, at any
Yes.
local level. So it's like, you know, if I want to do something positive, I have lots of ample opportunity to do it here.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I mean, it's it's probably not healthy or skillful to, cause yourself, for any of us to cause ourselves unnecessary suffering about something that we can't change in a direct way, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, another thing too is the distaste I found after being a journalist for so long, for 4 or 5 years, and working at the newspaper, and kind of realizing that, like, most of the time, most of the shit that you do doesn't make a fucking difference,
Right. Right.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I
So I
mean,
mean,
I was covering local politics in DeKalb County, and I can't tell you how corrupt that shit was, and we're talking about city council, school boards and stuff like this. I mean, if the local school board is this corrupt, I mean,
right.
think about how you work your way up to the next level. Once you get to be a senator, or get to be fucking president or something like that, the amount of palms that you probably had to grease, and the amount of things that you probably had to do, and people, you fuck over just to get where you're at. You know what I mean? There's a great quote by I think the jazz musician Christian Scott said it, where he said that, anytime somebody tells you it's just business, it means you're gonna get fucked.
Oh, yeah, that's a good line.
Yeah, it's great. So and it rings true pretty much more often than not.
Right.
So that's part of it too, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of like staying in
Well,
a
that's
bubble a
why.
little bit.
I mean, that's why. It's. I mean, on some level, the most important thing to do is to take care of ourselves, right? I mean.
Yeah.
I
mean, you're no good to anybody if you're no good to yourself, right?
Exactly. That's where it starts, at least, So I usually try to jump in kind of really, rewind back pretty far. And so I wanted to ask you, did you grow up in a religious family or in a religious context at all?
Yeah, I did. I grew up Catholic. And it's like weird, like my family wasn't really particularly religious. I think that they just sent me to Catholic school because they thought I'd get a better education, but that was when I was in Boston. And I ended up staying in Catholic school until I got kicked out of high school in ninth grade from St. Pius for smoking and a bunch of other, teenage, disruptions and stuff like that. But so going to church was kind of like a regular thing when I was younger. When I was a little kid, we'd go to church on Sundays, and I had religion class and stuff, and there were nuns at school and shit. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. My best subject was always religion in school.
Really?
because I think I was always trying to discount Catholicism. So,
okay, yeah. So from early on, you felt pretty rebellious against that whole system, huh?
Yeah. I was. I was baptized as a Catholic, but I wasn't confirmed. When it came time for me to decide whether or not to go through confirmation, I decided not to do it. So I don't know if that makes me not a true Catholic. I guess technically not. I don't know. But yeah, and then actually I was at one point in my life too baptized as a born again Christian.
Oh wow.
This is a long story, but I didn't believe in any of it. But I was stuck. I got in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, and I got arrested when I was 15 and sent to like a rehab for a while, and then like a rehab / boarding school that said it was non-denominational, but like all the teachers and all the counselors there like went to the same church and stuff like that. And there had been like kids there that had been there for like years, so I was like, well, fuck, dude, I'm not going to stay here for like 3 years just because I don't want to like play this game. So I like went full bore and like did the Bible study, got baptized in a lake and shit. I think I still have a picture of it somewhere. And I ended up getting out within less than a year. So it was tough.
So by getting baptized and committing to that, that was the whole deal, is they like
well, that and a bunch of other things, like kissing ass and like, trying to, show that I was like working on my steps in AA and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a whole tapestry kind of thing. But I think that was kind of a catalyst where they started looking at me seriously and being like, okay, this guy really wants to change, which is
Mm-hmm.
fucking stupid, but you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you were a teenager and you know, like in your early 20s and stuff, did you feel like you had any sense of your own spirituality, or were you kind of more atheistic or?
I don't know, not really. I was like in and out of AA for a while too in my 20s, and like, so like, I mean, I had a sense that I felt like that there was something out there, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. Um, you know, and I didn't really look too much for any sort of guidance or anything like that. I mean, I did enjoy like Buddhism, and I would go to like, you know, Buddhist prayer meetings and stuff on occasion and
Hmm.
stuff, you know. The Tibetan monastery that was it was in Atlanta off of Briarcliff, I think. I
Okay.
forget the name of it. Drepung Lozi Ling maybe was the place, but so I used to go there, and you know, I read a lot about, you know, Zen and stuff, and like all the Suzuki books and stuff, and you know, I mean, I really do like Buddhism, but like, I mean, if I had to choose a religion, if someone like forced me, I would probably choose Buddhism. But
Yeah.
like, you know, there's also a lot of stuff about it that I don't like. That doesn't
Yeah.
really answer the questions that I want.
I feel you.
So, yeah,
I feel similar about Buddhism. I mean, I've been drawn to Buddhism for, I don't know, maybe like 13 years or something like that. And I go to the Zen Center here in LA sometimes, and I'm really tight with the main Zen priest there actually. And
hmm,
um I've been drawn to Zen for a long time. And but I like how you put it. It doesn't answer all the questions that I'm curious about.
yeah,
And you know, as even though I do go to the center and stuff, I've never considered myself a Buddhist or anything like that, and I don't plan to.
yeah,
Um, but there's a lot of wisdom there for sure.
absolutely. I mean,
And
at
there's
the
a
end of the
lot of
day,
different schools too.
any religion, you know, that actually helps people, I mean, it's a positive thing, but you
Totally.
know, religion is also responsible for so many horrible negative things throughout history that I think,
Exactly.
you know, if you put it on a scale, I wonder what what would, you know, come out ahead, the
Right.
positive shit, or the, you know, thousands of people who died in the Crusades, or the, you know, the you know, witch trials in Europe and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it depends on who it's in the hands of. And you know, once it becomes overly institutionalized, then that's when usually there's problems. But I think that like the seed of
right.
all religions is positive for the most part in terms of just you know, whether it's like the mystical experience or
Hmm.
you know, with Buddha, it wasn't just the mystical experience, but it was also just this desire to, you know, awaken others and relieve suffering for
Hmm.
others, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I guess you could argue the same for Jesus as well. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so do you feel like you have had many kind of spiritual experiences in your life at all?
Um, I mean, I have to think about that. Like, I do.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you call it like the first time that something really struck me was, I don't know if it was as much as a spiritual experience, maybe, but it was like when I was in my 20s and going to college and stuff like that, and I was kind of like asking myself, doing like a personal self inventory of like the things that I believed and like why I believed them, and soon, you know, quickly realizing that the majority of the things that I believed weren't things that I maybe necessarily believed, but stuff that had been kind of implanted in my mind since childhood,
Yep.
you know, from Catholic school or parents or something like that. You know, I think a lot of times, you know, parents tend to not necessarily believe in a religion, but put a face on it in order to show, to make it easier to demonstrate to their children what the meaning between right and wrong is, and what good morals are and stuff like that. To kind of have like a second, sort of like layer of that, to make it easier to teach them. So, and these are kind of those things that I was thinking about. That was one experience. Another experience that I had was when I was sleeping in a snow cave in Montana in Glacier National Park. And I had this kind of like waking dream where this is gonna sound really cheesy, but like a bunch of like turquoise fell down through the snow cave, like where I made these little air holes so it wouldn't sag and collapse on me. And a bunch of turquoise fell down the snow cave and then turned into a wolf and then turned into a chick. And then that was it. But I don't know.
Oh,
I mean,
weird.
I think it was weird. I think it was just kind of like a connection with nature sort of thing, because I was sleeping on this. It was this thing called solo that we did, where it was like I was on like a wilderness trek, and you had to go spend 3 days by yourself in the woods, and it was during this really huge snowstorm. So the first day I spent all day building the snow cave, and then I basically spent the rest of the time in the snow cave when it was when it was like really snowing out badly. And but the cave was in front of this kind of ridge, and that overlooked this valley where there was another mountain, where there's this famous mountain called, I think it's called the Sleeping Chief or something, because it's that part that we were in is Blackfeet Native American territory, and so it was a spiritual place, and it felt like one of those old places, that you find that people, had probably come to for ages, just
Right.
to look at that. And so it was kind of a holy place.
Yeah.
In that sense. So that's why I consider that like a spiritual
No,
experience.
that sounds cool. How big was this
Yeah.
snow cave that you built?
Big enough for me to stretch out in a sleeping bag. I mean, it took me from sun up to sundown to do it.
Yeah.
It sucked. Yeah, it sucked. It was not, I mean, basically what they did was they were like, all right, here's your shovel and here's your tarp. This is to build your shelter. And we had watched a demo like a couple days earlier of like a wilderness instructor building a snow cave. So we like kind of knew how to do it, but like apparently most of the dudes were just like, well, fuck that. I'm just going to like set this tarp up like a tent, and it snowed for 3
Yeah.
days straight. So all the guys who did that were like fucking freezing and completely fucked. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I've got 3 days. I might as well just make the best of it. So
Did they
it
check
was
up on you at
legit.
all, or like they just
Yeah,
said,
they did. They
okay,
came once a day to like check to make sure we were doing all right, stuff like
right,
that, and like to give us a bit of food and stuff. So
right.
yeah, it was weird. It was cool though. Yeah, that was when I was at a wilderness treatment center, which was the rehab place that I got sent to after I got arrested.
Okay.
So
Well, before we get into the, I want to hear a little bit more about like your own spiritual philosophy. And I want to, I'm going to kind of like bring back up what you were saying about the cosmos, because that seems related. But before that, I just wanted to ask, like, do you feel like you have many synchronicities in your life? Meaningful coincidences?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that before.
For me, they pop
so.
up most with books. Do you have it with books where it feels like some mysteriously kind of like, I feel like sometimes I'll just kind of intuitively know if I'm not ready to read a book, and then I'll pick it back up months later, having something happened or reading something else that prepared me to be ready for it. And then like, so I don't know, synchronicities always happen around books for me. Have you had anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, that happens to me sometimes, where I pick something up and I realize that this isn't what I want to read right now, or this isn't what I want to look at. It happens
Mm-hmm.
with people a lot too. It's surprising how much it happens with people, where it's like you realize that you know someone that knows somebody else who,
Yeah.
especially here, I guess, because there's a lot of, I mean, the expat community is really small, so it's always like, oh man, this person, so do I.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then sometimes though, it's like sometimes like it's, synchronicity happens to me when I'm writing too, where I just have to get something out. There's like different forms of writing for me, and like one of them is like the kind of like painful purging kind of writing process, and then there's also like just writing for fun, and writing. I'm working on this horror stuff now, but I mean I
Yeah.
kind of consider it work. It's not like super inspired. I mean, it's inspired. It is inspired. Like I get
Yeah.
ideas and I'm inspired to write them and everything like that, but they're not those ideas from elsewhere that you can't explain.
Mm.
And usually those ideas from elsewhere that I can't explain come to me either right before I'm about to fall into REM sleep in the middle of the night, or in my dreams. I kind of feel like the most, sorry, I'm smoking so many cigarettes.
You're all good, man.
The most I experience synchronicity would be within my dreams, in the sense that things happen in my dreams that happen in real life. Or like I was talking to somebody the other day about how like I have like ongoing relationships with people in my dreams who I've never met in real life.
I've heard about this before. I don't, as far
So
as I can recall, I don't have that happen. That's cool.
yeah, so it's like really, really weird. And so like that's strange. And it makes me wonder if like the possibility of like someone having the same thing with me, because if it's possible for me to have that, of course it's possible for other people.
Totally.
I'm not unique, and kind of like I like really consider like the dreams that I have a lot of the times as like this other alternate universe, another world or something that
Totally.
I'm living.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, dreams have always been extremely fascinating to me. I keep a dream journal, and like, I mean,
I started
sometimes
and I stopped because it started to creep me
too
out. I
much.
was like, all right, I'm only gonna write. You know what I mean? Like I use a lot of my dreams as story ideas, but some of that shit I can't write about. It's just
Yeah. Oh yeah.
too
Some of
fucking
it's
fucked
too
up. It's
far out.
weird. It's morbid
Um,
and
do you
awful.
so but you you do use like things that happen in your dreams or insights that come to you in your dreams for your writing? You feel like sometimes that's like ideas or images from elsewhere or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. One of the last short stories I had published was literally just an entire dream that I wrote down.
That's cool.
And it's nice when you can do that, because it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do shit. This idea just came to me, like, and it's a really weird story. Um, I don't know how I can
Can
I can't
somebody
really.
find it on, can we find it online?
Yeah, and I actually have a website now too, danieljohnbeauregard.com, and it's got like, I've been pretty good about updating it lately because I've
Nice.
got literally nothing else to do. So
I'll put the link in the show notes. Is it John or Jon?
it's John.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Poor Soil, and yeah, I mean, it's really weird. It's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like there's like, people use this drug named Alice to basically like illuminate the landscape that they're in and everything like that. And they go to the
Mm.
village in the middle of the night, and like there's like an old man in like a hut who ends up being a hologram, and then all of a sudden the character goes out and realizes that there are like 12 or 13 like identical huts with old men with malfunctioning holograms, like
Mm.
and it talks about a dream I had inside my dream in the story. So it's like super meta. I'll drop the link here.
Yeah, drop it, and
But so
I'll put that in the show notes as
in the
well.
chat, yeah. But so like I'm always exploring that stuff with dreams, you know. I think it's really important to kind of have that sort of connection, because they can really tell you things, you know. I mean, I think ultimately, you know, I mean, sure, your subconscious is unpredictable, and you know, you can't tell what's real, and like, I mean, there's writing about every aspect of what the subconscious is, but I think the subconscious is also, you know, this sort of fragmentary way of telling us things that we might have overlooked in our
Yeah.
life or forgotten, or you know, things that we're having trouble trying to connect with in waking life, that for whatever reason, we can tap those resources when we're dreaming, you know.
Yeah.
So, and the fact
Yeah,
that it
because
happens in like 2 or 3 seconds is like incredible to me.
that is incredible. Yeah, I had a dream one time that was 3 years long in the dream, you know, and every single day of those 3 years, like inside the dream, every day was like a full day, you know, it was a full
That's
3 years.
absolutely
Like
nuts.
I remember living the whole 3 years, and like tons of stuff happened
Wow.
day by day, you know, and in the dream I had met a girl who in real life she had been my girlfriend, but we had already broken up by the time I had this dream. But in the dream, I had not met her yet. And then I met her in the dream. And then we were
Wow.
together for those 3 years in the dream. And then there was, I don't know, like basically for one reason or another inside the dream, I wanted to go back in time 3 years and to before I met her. And I met one of my friends in the dream, one of my friends in real life. He was he was in a sand trap on a golf course. So I met him in the middle of the night in the dream in a sand trap on a golf course, and he was like a shaman in the dream, and he had the power to take me back 3 years in time. And he was like, when you wake up in the morning, 3 years will have you will have gone back 3 years in time. And you know, still inside the dream, I woke up and I was
That's
checking my
nuts.
calendar and I was looking at
I've
what.
never heard of such an elaborate dream before.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, it was crazy. So it just shows,
It's
you
like
know, like
it's a bit like the Simpsons episode where Homer eats the psychedelic hot pepper, and then the voice of Johnny Cash, you know, is the
yeah.
coyote, and he wakes up on the golf course.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was wild, and it just who knows how long that dream lasted, like in waking
Right.
time. You know, it might have been 3 minutes, but it was 3 years in the dream.
Yeah, it makes you wonder like how much more easily your brain can absorb information on a subconscious level than it can on a conscious level. You know what I mean?
Right.
You think about like, right, you know, there's like all those self-help tapes and stuff like that to like increase your vocabulary, and like stuff you can listen to while you're sleeping that supposedly is like, you know, can turn you into like a speed reader and stuff like that. And it's
Mm,
like, I wonder, I mean, I guess it works, you know, it would make sense for it to work. I've never tried
yeah,
anything like it, but
it would
you
make
know,
sense. You're right. Yeah, I haven't
yeah,
tried that either, but yeah, the receptivity of your mind in more of an unconscious or subconscious state seems really powerful.
yeah.
Do you think there's anything to Carl Jung's like collective unconscious? Like, do you think that your mind or your consciousness has access to like some treasure trove of accumulated or inherent archetypes and symbols and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just with like reading, well, I mean, you know, the having relationships with people in dreams is one thing, you know,
Yeah.
right? That I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, which I
Mm-hmm.
could kind of, you know, supports that sort of theory. And then also, all that shit about like the DNA double helix and the serpent coil and everything like that, being drawn from, one end of the earth to the other, in completely different times,
Yeah.
or,
Oh yeah,
completely
there's
different
tons of
places.
mutual discoveries and stuff.
That kind of shit for sure. And then I think that there's some sort of collective unconsciousness. I believe in like, I don't know, like psychic abilities, different psychic abilities and stuff like that too. And like different, I guess I would say like spheres of reality or planes of existence that coexist at certain times in certain places and stuff like that. So yeah, there's all, it's like explaining the feeling that you've been somewhere before, but you've never been somewhere before,
right.
but you've been there.
Right.
Have you been there in a dream? Were you there as another person? Or like, did you like astral project yourself there?
Right.
I've had dreams where I've woken up floating above my body and then zoomed out of the window. Oh, that's another spiritual experience I forgot to mention. I'm also really good at lucid dreaming. There's a really good book by Jesse Ball. I don't know if you know him. He's an awesome writer, Jesse Ball. I think he teaches at the Art Institute of Chicago too. But I think maybe he's got some really famous books. But he also has these books. One of them is called Sleep, Death's Brother, and he wrote it for children who are like, living in a horrible situation, or people who are incarcerated. And it's meant to basically be a form of escape for people who have no form of escape through the use of lucid dreaming. So it's a manual, it's a walkthrough manual about lucid dreaming, and it trains you kind of on how to lucid dream successfully by doing things like, every time you're dreaming, pick up a book and look to see if the title is right or if it's gibberish, or walk through a door and then turn around and walk back through a door again. And you kind of train yourself to do these certain things, these actions when you're dreaming, that will click with your mind, and suddenly you'll realize that you're dreaming, in the dream, and it's really worked. So
that's cool. Yeah, I read I've read some books about lucid dreaming, and I read one book about I guess it's like Tibetan dream yoga. There's a whole tradition
Oh wow, I didn't know
in
that.
Tibetan Buddhism about training yourself how to lucid dream and stuff like that. I didn't know that either until a couple of years ago, and it's very fascinating. I think you'd be into it.
Cool.
I've probably had maybe 4 or 5 lucid dreams in my life. I guess I'm a little bit undisciplined about like training myself for that. I want to do it more. So you can do it pretty regularly, huh?
Yeah, when I want to. Yeah.
Does it have any impact on your waking life? Like, or do you feel like it's teaching you something about reality?
Sometimes, yeah. I don't know. Just the fact that you can lucid dream, I think, is really cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if it really informs my reality too much, though, because I end up doing things like having sex or flying or something.
Right.
They're not like, the most spiritual lucid dreams.
Yeah.
But
sometimes I feel,
dreaming.
Right. Yeah, you might as well. I sometimes I feel like in my waking life, when I am more conscious or mindful or something, it almost feels like I'm waking up in a dream, or it almost feels like lucid dreaming. So I often like feel like that type of experience in our waking life has some sort of parallel, or maybe it's just kind of interesting or useful perhaps to think, to kind of like consider that when we have like awakening experience in our waking life, it is kind of like we're waking up in a dream. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or waking up from a nightmare,
Right.
depending
Right.
on what's happened. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you
I mean,
uh-huh.
no, I was gonna say I remember like the first time where like I realized that like I wasn't upset anymore about my broken up marriage, and it was like that was waking
Mm-hmm.
up from a nightmare.
Yeah. Right.
It
Right.
was an
Yeah.
awakening. Yeah, it was an awakening experience, and it felt so freeing.
Yes, of course.
That I was like, man, it's taken so long, like, you know, um, that felt like waking up from a dream,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
dream.
that's a good point. Yeah.
So,
Well, just as a last note on all that stuff, I wanted to just, when you were talking about writing, like outside of dreams, I mean, like you said, there's kind of different styles of writing, and I know what you mean.
mhm.
Like there's different modes that you can get in, and maybe, different kind of like mind states that you can get in for different outcomes or whatever.
Yeah.
But like in your waking life, do you ever feel like you kind of tap in or cultivate this state of mind that allows you to be more of like this antenna or receptor for ideas and images that are like beyond your conscious mind?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That happens a lot when I'm writing poetry or
Yeah.
like experimental prose,
Yeah.
where I'm kind of like just, channeling stuff through myself, Um, and I find that, I don't know, helping, it helps too to kind of play with form a lot. Like this novel that I wrote called Lord of Chaos starts out with, this kind of narrator that's like a consciousness that wakes up, that awakes into a featureless void.
Mm.
Um, and throughout the whole time, it's trying to figure out, like what sensory perception is and what senses it might have and what is the void, and if it's, if there's something called the void, that means that it might not be a void because that's something rather
Right.
than nothing,
Right.
and I started writing that uh, using a constraint where I blindfolded myself and listened to white noise, and basically wrote with my eyes closed. And I'm not a good typer, so that added another, sort of like chance into the mix, because some of the stuff I was like, what was I trying to even say,
Right.
And so I kind of like blocked all this together, and then every subsequent part of the book, I did something different. Like one of them is one of the parts is a therapist talking to a persona, a person, who's in therapy. And what I did for that was I would take long baths and have a digital recorder and pretend that I was a mental patient interviewing myself about what it felt like to be born as a fly.
Mm.
So in the hold of the ship. So like I find that like, deconstructing what we think of as normal narrative form and structure and stuff like that kind of helps bring those things in a lot easier too, because we're
Totally.
unfamiliar with it. So
Right.
things kind of crop up, you make mistakes that you keep,
Right.
that you don't know where they're from.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in like, the Jack Spicer philosophy of, just, kind of being these, the inspiration is coming from somewhere else, and
Yeah.
we're just there to like kind of rearrange the furniture a little bit,
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
and and, and see what comes out. So
Yeah, I like his theories about that, and I love his poetry.
Yeah.
And
So Vancouver, have you read the Vancouver Lectures?
I Alex mentioned those to me too, I think. I
Oh,
have
really?
I
Oh, that's
have
funny.
yeah. It's
He
it's been
talks
some
about
years. I
that
read
quite a
them when
bit.
I was at SF State, I think.
Yeah, he talks about that quite a bit in the. There's a
Yeah.
recording of it on the Penn Sound site, so you can hear him talking. It's pretty
Nice,
cool.
nice, nice. Yes. Um do you feel like the void or emptiness has any characteristics?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's weird because sometimes, like, emptiness is supposed to be emptiness, but just calling it something makes
Right.
it not
I
emptiness,
know.
right? So,
I know.
um, I think that probably there's things that exist that words can't suffice to describe,
Sure.
or it's like our anti-selves or something like that, or like a
Mhm.
reflection or
Mhm.
something. You
Mhm.
know, it's like backwards world maybe or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Or like everything means something different.
Mhm. Mhm.
Things are malleable because there's no meaning behind them because the words that we ascribe to those things don't exist. You know.
Do
Um,
you feel like um do you feel like our imaginations have a an actual um you know like have you ever heard of Neville Goddard by any chance?
mm-mm,
Neville Goddard is very
no.
fascinating, and I'm not saying I believe this, but like the amount of conviction that he has about this is so fascinating. But he says that God is the human imagination.
Yeah.
And so he like literally equates God with our own imagination. And I mean, he's kind of linked with like the new thought school about like thought
Mm-hmm.
causation and imagination
Mm-hmm.
creates reality and blah blah blah. I don't know. How do you feel about that sort of thing?
I mean, I feel like imagination creates a certain reality, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that since we can usually control our imagination, and I don't think that God could be something that we could possibly control.
Ooh, I
Um,
like that.
you know, so um,
If
I
you imagine something vividly that you want to manifest in your life, do you think that there is a chance that something mysterious? It's like, sometimes I think of it as like when you imagine this vivid, like when you imagine the wish fulfilled or whatever,
mm-hmm.
it often does potentially feel like there's like you're kind of casting this magnet into the future and then pulling yourself toward it or something, and then like the means for that
Sure,
to come up often do feel mysterious. Actually, I mean, some of it's just down to earth practical stuff. It's like you've made your mind
yeah,
about this, you want this thing to happen, so you do what needs to happen, you do what you have to do to make that happen.
mm-hmm.
But sometimes the means for that thing to arise into your life do feel kind of mysterious.
Sure, but I mean, that can also be like something that's like programmed through via like our subconscious. You know what I mean? Like if we subconsciously want something to manifest too, even without realizing it, our body is going to make ways to try and bring ourselves closer to that end result, whether or not we
Hmm.
realize it or not. And it
Yeah.
could be something like crossing the street at a certain time of the day or some shit, or
Right.
doing something that you wouldn't normally do and you don't know why, and then something mysterious happens.
Yep.
We set ourselves up for it, I think, in certain ways. But that's
Right.
not to say that it isn't a part of like a mystical experience as well.
Right.
It's just like I think those things happen. Um, like in really weird ways sometimes. Things,
Yeah.
coincidences add up to the point where there's too many coincidences. But
Right.
how do you explain it otherwise? I mean, if you take the view of someone who's has a staunch view of what reality is,
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just a coincidence. Well, yeah, but there's like 10 fucking coincidences. Like, I mean,
Right.
that's a lot of
Exactly.
coincidences, don't you think? Well,
Right.
yeah, but what else could it be? I don't know. The power of
Right.
positive thinking, it could be our subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything, but
Yeah.
I definitely believe that too. I mean, and I think it's important to think that way sometimes too, because ultimately it helps us try and get to where we're going. And it
It's
can be
helpful to think in what way you
you know.
mean, to be open to the possibility that something weird is going on, or to, is that what you mean?
No, to kind of like, to have these kind of maybe vague goals or things that you want to
Oh yeah.
manifest, but aren't
Oh
sure
yeah.
how to do it. Because basically, you look at it, and it's like once you decide something like that, you're like essentially casting a spell.
Yeah, exactly.
And that and a lot of spell casting has to do with things like that. And I don't know a lot about magic,
Mm-hmm.
in the traditional sense, but I do
Yeah.
know that, a lot of it has to do with those sorts of things and those sorts of
Part of
beliefs,
me feels like
where if
it's,
you believe
yeah.
something strongly enough and if you put out enough physical energy, that something will manifest. I
Yeah.
was reading, man, this is kind of a side note, but it deals with what we're talking about. But I was reading the books by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Do you know them? Ed Warren is a famous demonologist. Well, he was. And Lorraine Warren is a medium, and they're the ones who first investigated the poltergeist at the Amityville
Mm,
house.
okay.
And they have all these books about all their, experiences and stuff with like demonic possession and stuff. And it scared the
Mm-hmm.
shit out of me because
Yeah.
they're real stories to them. I don't know. I don't believe in demonic possession because I don't believe in demons or heaven
Yeah.
or hell or anything like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, hearing those like stories told firsthand about stuff like that, like it's
Hell
not a
yeah.
movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, they were talking about like, the stuff that, that movie The Conjuring is based on and everything
Okay.
like
Yeah,
that.
that's what
And
I was gonna ask you.
it's just like, whoa, man, that's some spooky shit.
Yeah.
But in order to believe in all that sort of stuff, from their point of view, from their reality, it's a religious thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Demonologists are religious people, and they have to
Mm-hmm.
believe in God and the power of Christ. To
Mm-hmm.
exorcise a demon. I don't think it's that simple. I think anybody could exorcise a demon. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if shit. I mean, people have been doing it for years, not just Catholic priests. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
So
power of
I mean,
belief. I mean, I think
yeah,
that it doesn't, it's like it's just, it's not the specific name or whatever that you're ascribing that like directing your belief toward. It's just the power of belief itself, I think. And
yeah,
if you believe that the demon's there, then you're going to feel that way too. If you believe that the demon has been cast out, then if you're going to
yeah.
feel that probably. So and I mean, I
I
feel
will
like
say
Jesus is saying
demonology
that
is
a
pretty
lot. And
cool, though.
yeah, it's
There's
fascinating.
lists and lists of different demons.
Yeah.
Like that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That have been collected over the years with names and sigils and everything. You know.
Right, right. Oh yeah, that is
So
fascinating,
it's
especially when there's
yeah.
similar, similar descriptions of entities like that from different parts of the world that
All
haven't
over.
come up talk.
I was gonna bring up the will o' the wisp thing that I'm fascinated about, which is like the Oni Baba and the ghost lights and stuff like that. And almost every culture has a will o' the wisp story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I ever went back to school, I'd probably study folklore just because this type of folklore specifically, where it's like, you know, every culture has seriously, like every culture has
Yeah.
this thing where they're traveling in the woods at night and they see a floating ball, that one culture thinks it's, I think in Ireland it's the ghosts of aborted fetuses, and then
Mm.
in Asia a lot of the time it's demons. but these types of things, you know, and there's a really good one, a really good one called El Enchimayan, which is based on like it's kind of like from this area, you know, like South America and stuff like that, in Paraguay, and it's a ghost that comes in the form of a child that like emits like, you know, a radiant, you know, luminous glow like a ball, you know, and basically it comes in the form of a child, but the child collects souls for another demon. So it's you know, I mean, these things exist all over the world, these types of things, like trolls and Sasquatch and shit like that. I find it really fascinating. If I ever have a, you know, chance to like write a book like that, you know, I would do it in a heartbeat, you know.
Hell yeah.
Going, you know, but anyway.
Yeah, man, that stuff is really, really cool. And I respect, you know, people like Joseph Campbell for doing such deep research on that sort of thing, and
yeah,
you know, communicating that to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Well, I wanted to just touch on the whole cosmos thing you were saying. And, you know, so seeing the cosmos as an interconnected, interdependent system that is kind of infused with, I don't know, what is it infused with? Intelligence, creativity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's infused with all those sorts of things. I mean, you look at the idea of like, you know, the what's it called? You know, the burial that the ancient monks do, where they leave your body and it's eaten by vultures. You know, you look at something like that, and you can basically apply that sort of idea, you know, of returning to the earth in so many different ways. I remember writing about algae. I interviewed this scientist about how much the planet relies on algae, because what happens is, you know, animals eat these microorganisms and then excrete them, and then from sea foam, they're blown up into the air and into the clouds, and then from the clouds, they're blown out. These micro particles are blown out into the you know, stratosphere, and so they've found evidence of algae in space and shit, you know what I mean? So I mean, if you think about things like in terms of that, then I think that, yeah, I mean, everything is just this one big giant interconnected system. I also like the idea of thinking of like the earth as like a little spaceship flying through space too, you know, that sort of idea too, which is interesting.
Me too. Yeah. Buckminster Fuller, I think, Spaceship Earth.
Yeah. But so yeah, so I do think that like everything is connected like that, and
oh, for sure,
and like spiritually too. I mean, like,
oh yeah,
I don't know, you know, what, I feel like there are different realms out there, you know, that we can find ourselves in the same way that you can find yourself walking down a bad street at night, or a good, you know, right? I mean, you turn a corner and you realize that you're not where you should be,
right?
You know, or something. You know,
do you think that there was a beginning to the universe, or do you think it was beginningless?
I think that's a tough question. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I think that something had to start in order for us. But then I also, part of me thinks too that like the human, I mean, there was definitely a beginning to the universe, but I think in terms of the human race, it was kind of just like an accident, you know, a weird biological fuck up that was like, you know, we're just like a blip on the map of the universe. So, you know, but maybe that's how life starts, you know. as an
Right.
accident. I know a lot of people who've had kids accidentally.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
fuck.
I was an
That's how
accident.
the universe started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, I guess it just depends on how you define an accident too, because even the stuff we were talking about, like on a subconscious level, it's like
Right.
my mom, I didn't even know until recently that I was an accident.
Yeah.
But who knows about the subtle forces that like caused me to be born, that were out
Right.
of my mom's consciousness. You know what I mean? I have no clue.
Yeah.
But for some reason it makes so much more sense to me that the universe itself actually is beginningless.
Yeah. It
um
makes more sense than trying to explain it. I mean,
right.
you know, um,
Do you think
I don't know. I
consciousness
mean,
was born out of matter, or does consciousness somehow precede matter?
that's a tough one too. That's kind of what I dealt with in the beginning of that book that I wrote, Lord of Chaos.
Hmm.
But I mean, if there is no matter, what need do we have for consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
We have no need to explain anything. We just exist, you know.
Well, I feel like often people think about consciousness as the contents in consciousness, but the more I read, like, old Vedanta stuff and other
Mhm.
spiritual traditions, it's like consciousness in those traditions is not at all linked to the contents in consciousness. Consciousness is somehow unconditioned and is somehow conscious of, or everything arises in consciousness, in the sense that, like, consciousness does not arise in the body, but the body arises in consciousness, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I feel what you're saying. Another thing I think about is, like, how an oak tree basically exists in an acorn. You know
Right.
what I mean? Which is really weird. And so consciousness, even if it didn't exist in the way we think about it before creatures like human beings existed, it did exist in that acorn way.
Sort of form, right? Just waiting for something to come along.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something might never have come along, you know, or
Right.
I mean, it could wait for millions and millions of years. It's something that's timeless, you know. So, uh,
And that's why, when
anything
you
like
said that the
that.
human being blip accident thing, the only resistance I have toward that is that, perhaps the universe just was evolving to the point that it had a vehicle for consciousness or something like that. You know what I mean? So in that way, it
Yeah.
was more of like an inevitability
Yeah.
rather than something random.
Yeah, totally. I get
Um,
that.
yeah. Well, hey, so you were talking about senses earlier, and unfortunately, I got to get off in a minute because I got to teach a class.
Okay.
But you were, one question I've been asking everybody is, like, in addition to the five senses, what would you consider as the sixth sense?
Probably the subconscious. I mean,
Mm,
you know,
mm-hmm,
that and like I think that there can be like other, like when certain senses meet in a certain way, it creates a different sense too.
mm,
But it has to all be like perfectly in tune with each. They all have to be like, perfectly in tune with each other. But like, you know, maybe not another sense, but like a feeling that's just that's kind of almost inexpressible.
mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
um, and it could be when you're eating some really good food or something, and um, you know, a good example is like if you're eating really spicy food, like Szechuan Chinese food, and then you take a sip of, you know, lemon water, and you can feel the citric particles from the lemon dancing on your tongue, you know, and it creates this sort of sense of euphoria. That's happened to me before, and I never experienced it again. It was the spiciest Chinese food I've ever had. I think it was from Happy China in, you know, somewhere in Atlanta, this Szechuan Chinese food place where like it was the hottest food I've ever had, and all we had was lemon water, but the lemon water cooled our, you know, cooled down our taste buds and stuff, so we could keep on eating it. But when you, but you know, the numbing spice of like the Szechuan pepper opens up your taste buds so much in such a way where I've never tasted like what I didn't taste lemon. I tasted like citric molecules almost like bouncing up and down on my tongue, you know. And it was akin to like a spiritual experience. It was like totally euphoric. So I think that like the subconscious, and then like when certain senses meet in some sort of happenstance way, that can kind of like elevate it to another sense altogether.
I like that. That's kind of a cool like I don't know, metaphor or something too, because like paradox is so rich always, and it's like it's almost like paradox is the spiritual language, because you bring something into language usually and it's inherently reductive and dualistic, but then paradox kind of like navigates that in a more nuanced or subtle way, because it's admitting like, you know, two or more things can exist simultaneously even if they seem to contradict each other. So like juxtaposition and two things that are very different when they come into contact create this third thing, and that like, often can feel
it's
spiritual.
Like the idea of like, let's say when I was 6, I broke my arm, you know, and we were having a cookout in the backyard, and I could smell hamburgers grilling, you know. And now every once in a while, still, when I smell hamburgers grilling, I associate that with the pain of a broken arm. It's a perfect example of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, where you smell strawberries and think of something completely different, and you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Those sorts
Smells
of things.
and music do that for me all the time. It just blasts me right back to that moment. Well, this was fun, man. I mean, we could riff for a long time, and I want to, you know, I'm going to have like part 2s for all my guests. So I'd love to have you for part 2. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
And all your writing projects sound really fascinating and kind of linked to a lot of the stuff I talk about on this podcast. So I want to check out more of your writing.
Shit on the website. Yeah, it's all there for sure. Yeah, you would like my latest chapbook too, Anatomizing Uncanny Alley.
Sweet.
It's all about, you know, Freud's uncanny, you know, the idea of the uncanny mixed with like the art of Ed Atkins, kind of, you know, weird body horror-esque type stuff, and like subconscious shit. So
cool, like man.
But yeah, man,
that's one of my favorite. I guess it was an essay by Freud, right?
Yeah.
The Uncanny or whatever. I remember reading that a couple times in college.
Talks about that A.E. Hoffman story, you know, about the glass doll with the eyes. About that stuff. Pretty cool. Interesting. I think that's the only thing that's really stuck with me as far as Freud goes.
Yeah.
I think all his other theories have been pretty much disproven.
Right.
They're still big on Freud down here. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's definitely, you know, I mean, for better or for worse, he has lasted the test of time in a lot of ways. But you're right. Yeah. A lot of his stuff seems a little not taking everything into account, you know?
Right. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I really do. I'm going to check out more of your writing. I'm going to put the link on the show notes for other people to check it out as well. And
cool, man.
You know, I'm happy to hear that you've been writing a lot. It's a good day. It's a good way to deal with, you know, navigate the pandemic. And
Absolutely.
like you said earlier, I'm sure it does feel tough sometimes if you're like writing for your job in a completely different type of
Yeah.
writing, and then you might feel exhausted, but to still have the energy to keep pumping out the creative stuff.
What else can I do? I don't know.
Right.
I cannot write and I'll be angry all the time. So that's what happens when I don't write. I get pissed.
Yeah, I feel automatically worse as well.
Yeah. Anyways, man, well, you take care, okay? And stay
All right,
safe
dude.
and everything. And we'll talk soon. Let's keep in touch.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, man. Cheers. Peace.
See ya.